Good evening and welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Services Delegated Committee. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile telephones are turned off or switched to silent. Thank you. My name is Councillor Stavrou and I chair this committee. I will start by introducing my fellow councillors seated to my left at the horseshoe table in the council chamber are Councillor Jim Park, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Felicity Sinfield, the Mayor, Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, Councillor Wes Gold, and on the other side of the horseshoe table, Councillor Cynthia Watson, Councillor Gary Thompson, Councillor Jane Addis, Councillor Susan Biggar, and Councillor Victor Franco. I also acknowledge our CEO, Mr. Philip Storer, to my right, and our Coordinator of Governance, Ms. Kristen Ritchie, to my left. There are other officers in attendance tonight, and they will be introduced as they present their reports. We'll start with some housekeeping now. The purpose of the Service Delegated Committee meeting is to deal with issues relating to the provision of human and physical services at the Council's infrastructure. For those in the gallery presenting this evening, when we come to the agenda item, it will be introduced by an officer. I will then call you one by one to come forward and address the Council. I will ask the speakers to sit at the top of the horseshoe table, and I will invite those against the officer's recommendation to speak first, followed by those in favour. When making a submission, you are requested to present your viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you agree or disagree with the proposal. You may suggest an alternative approach which will satisfy your concerns. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on relevant issues. There's a limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, and that includes councillors. As chairperson, I do reserve the right to vary that, but I will seldom do so. At the 2.5-minute mark, I will ring the bell, which will indicate that you have 30 seconds remaining to conclude your presentation. After you have spoken, please remain at the table while I ask if any councillor has a question for you. And just to finish off, I would like to encourage all submitters, officers and councillors to speak directly into the microphone. This will ensure that everybody can clearly hear the discussion. We'll start with apologies. Ms. Ritchie, are there any apologies this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, there is one apologies, Councillor Gillies, who's on a leave of absence.
Thank you, Ms. Ritchie. Councillors and officers, are there any conflicts of interest that you wish to foreshadow for matters in the agenda tonight? Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a material conflict of interest on item 1.1, Campbell High School.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. It's noted. When we come to the item, I will ask you to appropriately make the announcement then too. We'll now move to the core of the agenda this evening, and we'll start with item 2.1, Camberwell High School, 100A, Prospect Hill Road, Canterbury, proposed discontinuance off-road and consideration of submission. This item was presented by Mr. Hutchison. Mr. Hutchison, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Councillors, before you is a report to consider finalising the statutory procedures to discontinue part of the 3.05 metre wide carriageway easement road located within the tidal boundary of Camberwell High School, which is located at 100A Prospect Hill Road, Canterbury, and to sell and transfer for nominal consideration plus costs the land to the Minister of the Crown administering the Education and Training Acts, and also to consider a submission received in regard to this proposal. The location of this easement or road proposed to be discontinued and transferred is shown yellow hatched in attachment 1. While it appears as an easement on the school's title, Council solicitors are of the view that the area shown yellow hatched in attachment 1 may, through its long use for the purposes of passage, have become a public highway or road. In summary, while the school owns the land comprising the easement or road, Council is the responsible authority for discontinuing a road. Both the school and the VSBA are seeking to have the road discontinued over safety and security concerns. If the road is discontinued, this would remove any public rights to traverse or access the land in the future. The road is considered by council officers to be not reasonably required for public access. A submission has been received objecting to the proposal on the grounds that the closure of the road will disadvantage members of the public. The submission is summarised in the report and the full submission is provided as a confidential attachment. The report also contains a response to the submission. So happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Tonight we have 3 people that have indicated they wish to make a submission on this matter. 1 is against the recommendation in the report and 2 support the recommendation. So once I have announced your name, please proceed to the top of the horseshoe table. And I will start by Mr. Graham Ellis. Mr. Ellis, thank you. Could you please start with your name and suburb? And you have 3 minutes for this presentation, Mr. Ellis. Thank you.
Graham Ellis from Canterbury. I live in Byron Street, Canterbury. And of course I'm against the proposal. Camberwell High School has had school buildings on both sides of this easement for at least 30 years. Safety and in today's officer's report, safety and security issues are frequently raised, but in non-specific terms. Over more than 30 years, except for several errant cars, this combined use by the public and school has been eminently safe. Some years ago, several cars attempted to drive northwards up this easement to Prospect Hill Road. At the request of the school, bollards were put in place nearly 2 years ago. The bollards have stopped these errant cars, but what are the other safety and security issues? There has been absolutely nothing else reported. That is an amazingly good safety record for the easement. Well, perfect, actually. So now in 2024, we have a situation where this easement is working very well, safely for both school and the general public. Compare this with the language used by council officers. They talk about enhancing public health, safety, security, and well-being. Current use exhibits all those attributes already. Elsewhere, the report states, the discontinuance will provide for the fair, orderly, economic and sustainable use of the land. Already, the use is fair and orderly for the public and school, and sustainable because it allows people to walk and cycle there. If closed, people will need to make longer trips, and because of gradients, people who are frail will have serious difficulties. Indeed, in this area, there are a number of moderately steep inclines to be climbed. Again, quoting the report, the discontinuance will provide good governance. Good governance is a very vague term. If closed, the only good will be towards the school. Good governance by council should allow for continued use of this valued amenity by the general public and ratepayers. In my original objection last year, I challenged the suggestion by officers that the easement may have become a roadway. In today's agenda, exactly the same wording has been used with no clarification. So this appears to be a non-issue. Councillors should know that the school has a substantial record of attempting to gain greater access to our local laneway system. Remember that for every one person lodging an objection, there are many with the same view, but they do not lodge an objection. I ask for this easement to remain open to the general public.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Right on time. Councillors, are there any questions for Mr. Ellis? Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Could you, as a local resident, perhaps explain how you or others actually use the thoroughfare
Yes.
on a daily or on an occasional basis, and how, we've got the figures in the report of numbers of users, but I'd just like to get an understanding if it's local residents using it or if these are school students or teachers?
Well, the report does separate school time use certainly from non-school time. So there are there are people using that lane in non-school times. Now, it can be people going from Riversdale Road tram, it can be from Riversdale Park going northwards, going to various places, whether it's Mailing Road and so on. In my case, I use it to go to East Camberwell Station, and I can also use it to go to Riversdale Station and places thereabouts. So there are a lot of ways that can be used. And of course, just as an aside, if this is permitted, there are a certain number of people who use that lane in easement in non-school times. A very valid comparison is the number of people using Byron Street or a similar street at the same time.
I was going to ask the comparison with Byron Street because it's not in the report, and why people may or may not use Byron through local residents. Yeah.
Could we actually have your response to the actual laneway tonight, unless there's a point that you're linking to this particular laneway?
So
Just Chair, I'd like to explain. I think Mr. Ellis did provide the response to my original question, and he then segued to the comparing the use of Byron Street, and that was in fact going to be my next question.
Okay.
So I'm just curious about why you might not use Byron Street, and then I'll also come to the other path on the other side of the school as well. So that is going to be my third question to flag that in ahead.
Okay, so it's a valid comparison in non-school times to think of the use of the easement compared with Byron Street or Willow Grove or whatever. And in my view as a local, the easement and Byron Street in non-school times have about the same action. So if Byron Street is perfectly good for public use, well, the easement is used about the same way, and that's one of the reasons why it should remain available.
Councillor.
And my third question, the shared path on the west side of the school, why doesn't that, in your view, provide sufficient connection for pedestrians?
Well, it's not at all useful in my case for going from my place to, say, East Camberwell Station. For lots of other people tripping thereabouts, closure of the easement will mean that they have to walk up maybe through Riversdale Park on the eastern end where it's fairly steep, and also could involve more walking up Prospect Hill Road where there's the same relatively steep gradient involved. It's not exactly helpful for anyone older and rather frail.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Frank, are you comfortable with the responses? Thank you, Mr. Ellis. There have been no further questions. You may return to the gallery. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next presenter this evening is supportive of the recommendation. It's it's Nicole Pope, Miss Nicole Pope, followed by Miss Gillian Lachlan. Miss Pope, please proceed. If you could state your name, suburb and organisation you're representing.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Nicole Pope. I'm the Director of Property in the Victorian School Building Authority, which is located in East Melbourne. I'm representing, through the Department of Education, the interest of the Minister for Education in the ownership of the land. So within the 3 minutes time limit that I've got here, I'll be speaking to a Department of Education perspective. And the critical issue here is the child safe standards. And for context, people might know a lot about them already, but they're compulsory minimum standards for all Victorian schools to ensure that they're well prepared to keep children and young people safe, including safe from the potential for abuse. So the child safe standards, they're more recent. They were commenced in 2016 and they were updated again in 2022. There are currently 11 child safe standards relating to different aspects of school operation. The child safe standards are kind of like a generalised structure that everyone needs to take into account about managing the risk. They're not prescriptive in saying you must not do this or you must not do that, but they speak to many domains, and within those domains, the school and the department are required to put risk management devices and structures in place. So Standard 9 relates to physical and online environments. And physical and online environments are required to promote safety and wellbeing while minimising the opportunity for children and young people to be harmed. So schools have to analyse and understand potential risks to students. And by actively considering these risks, the schools can act preventatively to reduce the chances of risks happening. And the management of risks in physical spaces, they require schools to consider the range of school environments and the nature of the physical spaces on a school site. So it's bespoke to a particular school. Generally speaking, access to school sites is managed through a visitor policy, which includes requirements for working with children checks and things like that. For the newer schools that we construct within our portfolio, these aren't designed to support general public access through the school site by members of the public that don't go in through the front reception with a purpose and they sign in through the visitor policy. Because that is seen to present a potential risk to student safety. I do acknowledge that there are some schools that have been developed many years ago that have different on-the-ground arrangements. That's just through history. The department in this instance very strongly supports the removal of this public access route in general through all school sites and through this site in particular. For us, it is a risk-based decision. And also in this instance, we consider that there are reasonable alternative access routes in quite close proximity to the former laneway so that the impact on the general public it's not seen to be unreasonable when it's balanced against the potential risk that is posed by maintaining the uncontrolled access by the public through the school site. And I don't think that this analysis is dependent upon there being repeated incidents that have actually been reported and have happened. This is about managing risk in a way that is consistent with the other schools in the portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Pope. Councillors, are there any questions for Ms Pope? Councillor Franco.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the explanation. Is the risk primarily during school hours? I take it that's the case.
Primarily, although as you would understand with a school, these days school use doesn't just occur, between 9 and 3. So there are times when students are on the site later, more so during the week than on weekends.
This is a question based on my own personal experience, and I have a very high regard for what Camberwell High does. I've taken my own children many, many times routinely and regularly on weekends to play in the school grounds, and I applaud the school.
Councillor Franco.
For
is there a question?
There is, and it's absolutely related to this point. So the school does a magnificent job in making the school grounds available to the general public. And as I say, I think that's something to be applauded. But in this case, there's a concern, and I understand the child safe standards. How do we relate those standards to making the sports facilities available?
The sports, yeah, happy to answer that.
Laneway, and how do you?
Yeah, happy to answer that. As the general rule, and it is up to individual schools to control, but there's department policy that encourages the recreational use of school facilities outside school hours by the general community when it's safe to do so, when it's reasonable to do so. That generally relates to potentially to ovals and playgrounds, and sometimes that use is organised in the forms of clubs and things that the school manages. Sometimes it's just a couple of kids kicking a footy on an oval. This is a laneway, so it's just an access point. It's not the only access point in the area. So from a recreational perspective, it's considered that there are other reasonable options available to the local community. So it's just a convenience argument about keeping it open after school hours. And that also poses a burden on the school in terms of managing that. And in this instance, we would submit that it's not reasonable. But that doesn't impact this school or Campbell Primary School or any school where they support the recreational use, generally of playgrounds and other open spaces by the community outside school hours. That's still something the department does support and also the schools support.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes, Councillor Rago, thank you.
If the laneway, if the report, the recommendation in the report proceeds, will, let's say, school children riding to school still have access through that site as opposed to members of the public? Is that what the intention
Well,
is?
it's up to the school where the gate is. There will obviously be a gate, and if the school is kind of operationally will manage, you know, I don't know if they have, Julie might be able to explain that this is the place where the kids with bicycles come in, this is the
Yes,
entrance.
well-
Some schools have different management, you know, solutions for that. That's also, if that is the solution for now, it's not to say that it'll be the solution in 5 years' time, who knows? But, so I can't speak to exactly how the school will operationalise it, but presumably there'll be a gate and people will be able to,
The school-
pedestrians, people accessing the school can get
The
in.
school's bicycle parking is currently off
Yeah.
part of that laneway.
But then the school, if you're riding your bike to school, you would be able to access it presumably.
Thank you.
There'll be no further questions. Thank you, Ms. Bowe, for your presentation. You may return to a seat in the gallery.
Thank you.
The next presenter is Gillian Lachlan. If you could start with your name, suburb and the organisation you represent. Thank you.
Certainly.
You have 3 minutes as well.
Thank you. My name is Jill Lachlan. I'm principal of Camberwell High School. I live in Surrey Hills and I work in Canterbury. I think I'd just like to add a couple of points. I don't even know that I need 3 minutes. Just in relation to the safety of the students, while I think that we're a really good neighbour, especially to our neighbours in Byron Street, and have been over the years that I've been principal, I've been there since 2010 in that capacity. I think that council also needs to take into consideration that while our neighbours might be very benign and well-meaning in their shared use of the laneway at the moment, that my duty of care goes well beyond that, to be concerned about the access to the site from all members of the public. And one of my considerations increasingly is the number of people in our community that might not be entering the site with good intent. And I can't, in all conscience, feel confident that I can have as safe an environment for my young people as I might have with that end of the laneway closed off to access for the general public, particularly from Prospect Hill Road. In my time in the school, we have had incidences where people of no good intent have come onto the site and engaged with my young people. And at that part of the school, we have the Year 7 and Year 8 centre, and I'm particularly concerned for the wellbeing of my young people of that age group and their engagement with members of the general public who are coming on the site without any control over their actions. They could go into classrooms, they could go into any of those areas of the school, and I don't think that is good enough from a child-safe perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lachlan. As indicated, you finished well within your allotted time. We have Councillor Franco. Oh, apologies. Councillor Hollingswood first. Question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Lachlan, for your presentation. I just wanted to seek clarification with the car park entrance of Byron Street. My understanding is that will still be open for pedestrians to walk through and then access through the rear laneway towards Willow Grove. Is that correct? Yes. Yeah. So there'll still be a means of access. It's just that short carriageway that would be impacted. Thank you.
That's correct.
Councillor Franco.
Thank you for your presentation. Look, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to answer the same question that I asked the former speaker. Primarily, why is it? I understand the child safety implications that you've brought forward, but what about after school hours? Why can't it be managed, say, closing this access to the site during school hours and related school hours and having it open as some of the grounds are available to members of the community in that fashion?
I think, as you've heard, it's a very highly used facility. So we have many young people on the site after hours using the basketball stadium all through that area. And also we have on the weekend, we open the facility up for use. We have Chinese school running there. We have a church group there. We have all kinds of activities after hours. So I think to think in terms of the school as just something that's running from 9 to 3 is probably not embracing the full engagement that the school has.
And just finally, so the kids who currently might, or other persons at the school who might use it to access to get into the bicycle parking, would that potentially continue? I mean, assuming the current configuration of the school is as it is.
Yeah, so the bike parking is off the laneway, but not at the Prospect Hill end, much further down the laneway. So there's 2 points of access at the moment. But if there was, and there would continue to be, they could come in off Byron Street, they could come in through Willow Grove, so there'd still be points of access that would be unimpeded. In fact, they're coming in from the current laneway end on Prospect Hill Road, they have to dismount and walk through. That's the expectation. Members of the public don't offer us the same consideration at all.
Thank you.
There being no further questions. Oh, apologies. Councillor Figure, please.
Thank you. Sorry, just to clarify again, as you were saying, it's sounding like your point is that members of the public have plenty of other ways to come through, but I guess for me that raises the question then, if there are lots of other other ways that people could gain entry to the school, how does closing this particular one make a difference to the student safety? Because they can still come in via the gates, can they not, on the field or the front gates, or are the front gates locked during the day?
The gates aren't locked, no. But you're talking about an area of the school where the general public can come in during recess, lunchtime, all of those times when the students are in large numbers through that space, whereas in other areas of the school, during the day, we have much better supervision and opportunity to lock up and would easily identify somebody coming in through a gate elsewhere in the school.
Can I just follow on? So that's the issue with this particular area, that for you it's about lack of visibility, as opposed to, for instance, down on the playing fields where there are several gates when you can enter, but you're saying it's easier for you to see someone coming through than if they came through in this area?
Well, there's not somebody there all the time watching. On the oval, if you're talking about the sports field, there's no gate directly onto the sports field.
I was thinking about past the basketball courts. Isn't there a gate there, and isn't there a gate up at the top of the...
There's a gate on Prospect Hill Road where the brick fences are, and there's a gate at the back of the school near the VCE Centre that's right near Riversdale Park. So it's about reducing the number of entry points as much as we possibly can to increase the safety, and particularly around a place like that laneway entry in Prospect Hill Road. There's high volumes of young people there moving backwards and forwards between buildings especially. So it has a particular nature that is a vulnerability, I think.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Councillor Park, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. I presume in respect of the questions you were just asked by Councillor Bigger, is it more a case of if people are then there, they're on the school premises unlawfully and you can deal with that? Isn't that the essential difference?
I think that's true. It's very easy to identify a stranger on the school grounds elsewhere in the school.
Thank you.
And ask them why they're there, yeah.
We've exhausted the questions. Thank you for your presentation. Please, you may return to your seat. We've finished with the presenters and we'll move to matters arising by the officers.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Some feedback from the speakers tonight, this evening, and thank you for taking the time to come in and speak. My understanding is students riding or walking to school will still be able to use that entrance. The VSBA officer that I've been speaking to regarding this matter has said it's possible that a gate can be placed at the current entrance there, and that would be open during school pick-up and drop-off times for students to walk to or ride through. The second item I have noted here is if it did remain open, access can't be shut off during school hours. So this at Prospect Hill Road, and we heard from Ms. Pope in regard to how access and risk management need to be addressed, and further we heard from Ms. Lachlan, the principal, maintaining that the safety of students and access from Prospect Hill Road needs to be managed better without having people just wandering in without a gate during school hours. I think I'll ask Mr. Hondrakis to speak to the issue of the gradient. I don't have that data. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just going back a few steps, the bollards were installed in May 2022 in response to an errant vehicle that deliberately chose to drive through that section and became stuck. In terms of pedestrian numbers, we've got relatively low use on a Saturday, typically weekend periods. Roughly 57 over a 12-hour period, compared to a typical school day where we have 862 that were recorded. There are alternative routes. We've got 50 metres through to Byron Street, and we also have the anniversary trail, which was actually opened on the 30th of October 2020, and that is actually disability compliant with relatively good grades. It is a little bit steeper up at the laneway to the east, but the anniversary trail provides you with good accessible access. In terms of the Byron Street footpath, residents in Byron Street can use the footpath. They've got a footpath in front of their properties. Yes, they can use the laneway if they choose to, but there is alternative access through there as well. In terms of school use, we did pick up the data. There are a number of students that actually ride to and from school. And at the north end, I think that was recorded at 22 in the afternoon peak between 2:30 and 3:30, and a little bit further to the south where the bike sheds are located that Councillor Franco pointed out, there's 55. So there are significant numbers riding to and from school, and that would be retained as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hondrakis. Mr. Hutchin, have you finished with your response, or you have any further to?
I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillors, are there any questions for the officers? There being no further questions?
I have a question, Chair.
Oh. Thank you, Councillor Franco. Please proceed. You are first.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Through you, could the officers advise whether we looked at all of the option of having the site closed during school hours and under school control during school hours, and that can be extended school hours or hours that the school's in use more broadly, such that it could be open after hours? And if we didn't, I mean, why did we discard that approach? I know some of the speakers have spoken to that point, but I'd just like to hear from council officers on that topic.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The request is that's been put to us is for council to use its powers to discontinue this road formally. That's the way I guess we've been investigating this particular request. The view that our solicitors gave is that this road or easement has become a road through its long time use, and for us to be able to close the road, we'd probably need to take a different route for a closure, but a closure is a different investigation rather than a discontinuance. I'll ask Mr. Hondrakis if before, in the previous lead up to this, if there was any looking at it from a closure point of view when the bollards were installed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, look, it wasn't specifically sort of examined. The request was effectively to close it off and regulate access, restrict access, and that was what was actually investigated, including the collection of the survey data.
One final question, Chair, perhaps for the Manager of Transport and Traffic. Was this route, my understanding, I've been advised this by a member of the public that it had previously been considered as the route for the anniversary trail, but was discarded by Council when we developed the existing route to the west of the school. Could you comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, look, there were a number of options considered for the realignment of the anniversary trail, including options through Riversdale Park. There was no formal link through to Byron Street. There was a detour proposed, but they were all fully considered by Council, and it was agreed that the current alignment was the most suitable alignment, including retention of the car park. But there were a number of alternatives investigated at the time, and one did involve use of Willow Grove and Byron Street and part of Riversdale Park as well.
Thank you, Mr. Andrakis. Councillor Franco?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Sorry, I put my light on premature to move the motion, but I'll wait until the appropriate time. Thank you.
Councillor Park, you have a question?
No, I was ready to second the motion that I thought was being moved.
Well, there have been no further questions, so they're sort of the lights confuse me, but yeah, Councillor Hollingsworth, this is the time to move your motion then.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the officer's recommendation.
And
Thank
I
you.
second that, Chair.
And thank you, Councillor Park. Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. To assist the mover and the second, are there anybody in opposition to this motion? There been no opposition to the motion. Councillor Hollingsworth, as the mover, do you wish to speak your motion?
I am happy to put the motion. Thank you. Yes. Would you like me to speak to the motion?
If you don't wish to, no.
Look, I think enough's been said, and I thank the officers for their comments and explanations. I thank the presenters for coming, and I know this has been some time going through the compliance process of getting it to the stage of coming to the chamber today. So I don't think anything further needs to be said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillors, then I put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you to the presenters this evening and to the officers for the report. We'll wait a few minutes for Councillor Thompson to enter the room as well, as he declared a conflict of interest. So, with everyone now back in the chamber as we should be, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, item 2.2, proposed City of Boroondara motions for the Municipal Association of Victoria State Council on the 17th of May. This item would be presented by Mr. Brian Wee. Mr. Wee, please proceed.
Through you, Chair, I'll keep it brief. The report presents two motions proposed to be put forward on the 17th of May 2024. The first motion relates to state government funding for municipal libraries, and the second motion relates to funding for local government immunisation services. The motions are attached to the report.
Thank you, Mr. Wee. There be no presenters for this item. Councillors, are there any questions for officers? And if you could suggest which officer you'd like to ask the question.
I'll leave it to the officers to work out who wants to respond. Through you, Chair. In relation to the vaccine motion, the report references that our council and other councils restrict access to free National Immunisation Program vaccines. And I'd like to understand how we undertake those restrictions. I have quite a number of questions in relation to these.
I'm happy to go one by one. So if you,
I don't know.
What you want to say all your questions and
Well, I'd rather not, because the questions will lead to more questions potentially. So whether we handle this way, or I'm going to, given the number of questions I have, one option I'm going to suggest is whether I submit my questions separately. But as the MAV delegate, I certainly have quite a few questions in relation to the proposed motions, and perhaps it might be worthwhile referring this to a future meeting of council and getting some advice on the questions that could be circulated to me and other councillors.
We have the CEO sort of wishing to say a few words. We might hear those words and we proceed that way.
Thank you, Chair. There are a number of questions Councillor Franco has asked of us today. Those questions in some cases are somewhat complex as to the detail required to respond to them. We won't have answers to all of those questions this evening. So my suggestion is, as put by Councillor Franco, that the questions be asked of us in an email copy to all councillors. We'll respond to that email so all councillors see the response. In terms of what happens this evening, I guess we'd like to at least get on the record that Council supports the proposition. There's no basis for a funding differential between the funding government provides to pharmacies and the funding government provides to councils to provide exactly the same service. That, I think, is a core principle, no matter what the answer to those questions might be, which we will not walk away from. We see no basis for that particular difference. So happy to come back with detailed responses for all councillors and yourself, Councillor Franco, to see the answers to the questions. If those answers cause councillors a concern to the degree of wanting to revisit this matter, then we can certainly do that as well.
Councillor Franco, are you comfortable with that response?
Mostly, but not entirely. And whilst I would be supportive of agreeing to a motion that questions the basis of the differential, I for one, as one individual councillor, can't do that without having the actual evidence and having seen the information beyond, you know, a summary, cursory sentence that says that's the situation. I'm just not satisfied myself. I've done my own research, trying to identify the exact nature of the differential, where it's outlined, whether there is a rationale. The report says there is absolutely no rationale for the differential in the report. The summary paragraphs say there's no basis, but I presume there must be some policy rationale somewhere. So without actually being satisfied, I neither support nor object to a motion.
But could I at least get an understanding whether the proposed course of action that the CEO outlined would satisfy you?
Chair,
well,
just a point of order.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Franco's one of 11 councillors here. There might be 10 other councillors that may be happy to support.
My point precisely.
Ditto.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I will. I have a number. So
well,
there are
on
a
that
number
basis,
of lights.
I'll ask my series of questions. We can go through them, and then perhaps other councillors can decide whether they're still satisfied. I mean, they may or may not be.
Councillor Franco, given the answer that the CEO gave, I don't think you'll be able to get a different response. I'm perhaps speaking out of line, but I think that the response was that some of the questions that you have asked cannot be answered tonight. There's an offer to get a written response by the CEO, and we are there whether you're comfortable with that. And I think Councillor Thompson's observation is valid. I will move to the next slide to see whether there's a question or there's a motion that's going to be proposed or foreshadowing. Councillor Watson.
Just checking with Councillor Thompson, did you foreshadow the officer's recommendation?
I have no objection to it, but I wasn't going to foreshadow it.
Okay, I'm happy to foreshadow moving the officer's recommendation at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Park, do you have a question or?
I do, just of the CEO. Can councillors be reasonably comfortable that the material before us is accurate, such that we could adopt the officer's recommendation?
My view is yes, but I may ask Ms McCackey to actually confirm she's done the detail in the report, to confirm that's also a view she shares.
Ms McCackey?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I am happy to stand by the information in the report. I think part of the advocacy initiative is to get better information out of the state government. So the way the funding arrangements work is that the Commonwealth provides the funding to the state, and then it's up to the state, their discretion as to how funding is then allocated to different providers. And part of what we're seeking through this advocacy is to get some greater clarity around the rationale and the criteria for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms McCackey. Councillor Biggar.
Yeah, actually, maybe this means that you're not, through you, maybe it means that this is a question that won't be able to be answered, but I guess I just, I did wonder whether we had asked and or had any information about whether the price differential related to the level of qualification of the person giving the vaccine, meaning a pharmacist is a more, potentially a more highly qualified person than someone in council. Is that what the issue is, or have we sought information about that through you?
There's no doubt a range of different arguments that go into how cost for different providers is identified. I think just to assume that because it's a nurse provider is therefore less amount of qualification, because often nurses, like take MCH for example, there's 7 years of training. So just because they're a nurse provider doesn't mean there's less years of education. So I think it's quite nuanced. I'm happy to provide some additional information on that, but I don't think I can give you that information now.
So we do have some information on it, but not
yes,
complete.
And obviously the Pharmacy Guild have their own advocacy into government in terms of how their funding model works, which is separate to ours and completely independent, obviously.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't trying to make the argument that they necessarily should be paid more, just trying to understand whether that was the rationale, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Biggar. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you confirm, or could one of the officers please confirm, the timeline of when council have to adopt motions, knowing that it's getting close to needing to be submitted? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. Mr. Wee.
The submission is actually due at midnight tonight. However, there are alternate options that are open to council if the will of council is another option.
Thank you, Mr. Wee. Councillor Hollingsworth, do you have a follow-up?
A follow-up question just with regard to the email that Councillor Franco sent with the questions outlined. I just wanted to have validated that the appropriate director may be able to answer them in a timely manner.
So you asked the question whether they can be answered at a time?
No, knowing that it's time critical that this motion be adopted.
So are you asking whether they can be answered by midnight tonight?
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's possible.
Okay.
That will not be possible.
So
I
sorry.
think it's important to remember that the State Council itself is the critical thing. So the question perhaps to be asking is, when is the State Council going to be held, and therefore is there an opportunity for Council to revisit its position should it desire to do so?
Sorry, I understand that, but I'm just, if the motions need to be modified, how do we modify them?
Through you, Chair, under the MAV rules, we can amend the motion up to the date of the State Council meeting.
That was what I was seeking. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. I see Councillor Franco.
I'd just like to ask a clarification, Chair.
I think we've gone through the questions.
Okay.
We have gone through the questions, and I have Councillor Watson on the other side.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Is there a second? Oh, Councillor Park, with glee. So then, is there any opposition to the motion? Councillor Franco is in opposition to the motion. Councillor Watson, as the mover of the motion, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Briefly, other than to say thank you to the officers for putting together this report and bringing these motions. I believe they're very, very important, and I look forward to them being debated vigorously at the MAV State Conference. I don't believe that these motions need to be tortured in the chamber tonight. If there are some clarification questions, take them offline. I think that the motions are very, very sound, and I'm happy to move the motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Parker is the second that you wish to speak or reserve. Councillor Franco is the opposition. Would you like to speak?
Thank you. Look, I'll be abstaining from the motion tonight. I'm going to explain some of the issues. At heart is that we simply don't have, the report may be accurate, or the comment report is too grand a term. The summary paragraphs of the motion that we're voting on here to refer to the MAV may or may not be accurate. I presume they are accurate, but I, as an individual councillor, don't have any evidence for that to be the case. And without having that information to hand, without having actual information, I feel distinctly uncomfortable voting in favour of a motion, and as the MAV delegate, being expected to speak to it at the MAV. Maybe the information will be provided. I know the CEO has said the information would be provided to me, so I take that, and I believe that to be genuinely the case, and the director. But at this point in time, I don't have that information. I feel distinctly uncomfortable going forward. So what sort of information? In relation to the library funding, our budget references a different 1.28 million. The summary paragraphs reference 1.19 million. There's a variation. We also, in our forward budget planning, have a factoring in an increase in the budget of 1.6%. This doesn't refer to that. It refers to a fixed amount. There could be a very clear explanation for what that is, but I don't have that. Separately, I have received a recent update that suggests this could be, the variation could be related to other income that's coming in. But again, I'd like to see that, and that perhaps may be the case. The report in relation to the summary paragraphs in relation to the library also reference that the expected timeframe for receiving the funding is early February. Now, early February has passed, so we either have received that funding or we haven't. In relation to the vaccines, the report references our council and other councils restricting for access to free NIP vaccines, National Immunisation Program vaccines, and the report says councils are being forced, inverted commas, to implement vaccine administration fees and restrict access to free NIP vaccines. I, for one, don't know how our council is restricting access to those vaccines. Are we doing it by way of fees, or are we doing it by way of quotas? What sort of restrictions are we? If there are quotas, how many people are missing out? Furthermore, there are additional issues that I'd like to have clarified. The report says references establishing an administration
Councillor Franco, your 3 minutes, unfortunately, are
well,
up.
that's unfortunate, but you have the discretion, and these are all the issues that are unexplained in relation to the paragraphs before us. But you can cut me off.
Can you afford me the respect of actually calling the 3 minutes, because you have spoken to your issue. You are going to get a response. This is going to get dealt with, and there are other councillors that wish to speak. Councillor Addis.
Chair, because I have full confidence in the goodwill and intent of this motion, I am requesting that the motion be put.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Do I have a seconder to this motion? Councillor Park seconder. Having a seconder to this motion, I will now put this motion. Those in
We're
favour?
referring to a put motion, or we're referring to the motion that Councillor Watson moved?
Councillor Franco, you're quite correct. Councillors, we have a seconder and a mover for the motion to be put. Those in favour? Motion's carried. Now, we are in...
I call a division, and you didn't ask for who was opposed to the put motion, Chair, just as a procedural point.
I don't have to ask for the procedural motion, but nevertheless, you can... One moment, I will ask for some advice. Councillor Franco has called for a division. Councillors, all those in favour for the motion to be put. Councillor Park, in favour. Councillor Sinfield. Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Gold. Councillor Watson. Councillor Thompson. Councillor Adders. Those opposed? Councillor Stavry supporting the motion. Those opposed? Councillor Biggar and Councillor Franco. Thank you. Now, having got that out of the way, the motion is asked to be put. I'm now putting the motion to for the officer's recommendation for the item that we are talking about, item 2.2. It's all those in favour. Motion's carried.
I call a division.
Okay, there's a division again. All those in favour? Councillor Park, Councillor Sinfield, Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Gold, Councillor Watson, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Adders, Councillor Biggar, Councillor Stavru. All those opposed? And any abstains? Councillor Franco. The motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you for the officers for the report and the discussion. Councillors, this meeting has been called for the specific 2 items tonight, and there will be no other items on the agenda or any general items or other agenda items, so the meeting can be closed. But before I close the meeting, I thank everybody who presented this evening, thank the officers for their reports, and the councillors for their due diligence. Thank you, everyone. The Service Delegated Committee meeting has been closed.